I had been studying piano from like kindergarten to 5th or 6th grade. I was really young, and I remember seeing The Who on the Smothers Brothers show. My mom was a big music fan, a music teacher, and they would always watch those kind of variety shows, and I don't know how old I was, probably 8 or 9 years old or something. And I remember seeing The Who play, and I was mesmerized by Keith Moon, completely mesmerized by him. To me, he was the rock and roll drummer. He was out of his mind. And I asked my mom and dad, could I play drums? When I started to really learn how to play drums, I would listen to Charlie Watts, Ringo. I love Mick Fleetwood's drumming. Drummers that kept very simple grooves as more of an inspiration for my playing, you know, and came up with parts and songs that worked and left a lot of room open for the music to express itself, you know, whether it's the guitar riffs or the keyboards or the vocals. And so that's, I mean, as much as I love Keith Moon, I couldn't really play like him, you know. I wish every now and then I try to play like him, right? I think being a drummer helps a lot in producing. As a drummer, you have to realize you have to fit within the context of a song. You know, if it's a band with a singer, and that's who you're supporting, you know, all the instrumentation needs to be that way. So I'm always very constantly aware of what the arrangements should be. There's also feel. I mean, just being a drummer, sort of knowing how a track feels, and not just the drums either, the bass player, the rhythm guitars, the phrasing of a singer. I also look at drum parts as like motifs, the same as a guitar hook or a keyboard hook or a bass line. I like to do that when I'm working with other bands too, with young bands especially, is get the drummer to come up with a great fill, a signature fill that's going to get into the chorus, and then do that every time. You know, if you watch me play, I don't really freestyle a lot. There's not a lot of crazy ad-lib stuff. And I mean, there are drummers that are great at that, but that's just not my style. I mean, I really am always sort of thinking about the parts that fit within the context of the song. I was really into drums, and I wanted to be in bands. And I started playing in bands in high school in Viroqua, Wisconsin, and had a really terrible band named Eclipse, but we started writing our own songs. My parents had a little 2-track tape recorder, and I got really obsessed with trying to record our band. You know, we'd have like 10 mics going through a little PV mixer or something, not even as hi-fi as PV, I don't remember what it was. And I would constantly set it up, and then we would record. I'd listen back in the headphones and go, the kick drum's not loud enough or whatever. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I took an interest at it when I was like 16 or 17 years old. Ended up going to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and took a couple semesters there in electronic music, which really got me into recording. At the same time, I met Duke in Garbage, and at the time we started a band called Spooner, which was sort of a new wave pop band. And that's also where I met Steve, the other guitarist. We wanted to put EPs and 45s out, and there was nowhere to do it. So we did it very old school, guerrilla style, do it yourself, you know, almost a punk ethic. And I sort of just took charge of that. I mean, I was interested in learning about recording. I did not know what I was doing, but we would go in these studios, and I would mic up the drums and get behind the board with the engineer, whatever, try to figure out what we were doing. And I just loved it. I mean, I realized very early on that I am a studio rat, that I love being in the studio. When I finished college at the University of Wisconsin, Steve and I very stupidly decided to start a business, a recording studio. Not the best way to make a lot of money. We call it Smart Studios, and right away we got busy. There were so many bands on the local scene, especially punk bands, and they would come in for $50 or $100, and we record all day. And I cut my teeth really doing that. Just tons of local bands. Started to have a little bit of local success, and that led to indie labels in the Midwest like Touch and Go and Sub Pop on the West Coast. And all of a sudden that led to doing Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana and a lot of bigger bands that kind of came out of the alternative scene.